couple of other things that I just want to mention to everybody before we meet our guest today. We are kicking off next month a positive aging community book club, and we're going to meet online monthly. And the book that we're reading is Achieving a Good Death by Chris Palmer. So if this is something that you're interested in, I will make sure to drop the registration link into chat before we're over today. And that should be a really cool thing that we're doing. And then the other thing, I'll drop this into chat too. Uh, Sometimes folks like to hear when I'm interviewed versus me interviewing people. So I was on this on the Comfort Connections podcast, and I'm going to drop a link to that podcast into chat before we're over today. So those are a couple of things that I wanted to share with you all. But today is really exciting because we have an amazing guest with us today. Um, and James, I I'm going to do the best that I can to pronounce your last name. You coached me through it. James Vandeputte.
Vandeputte.
Vandeputte. I knew I
Yeah.
wasn't going to get it
Yeah.
correct. But tell me, uh, I shouldn't be too embarrassed because
Yeah.
share with everybody your name tag there from the community you live in. Yeah, you see, uh, tell them why you're James Maurice around the community.
I have my first and middle name because I found that almost every time I was in the elevator, people would ask me how I pronounced my last name. And every single time I'd see them again or new people, it was a constant tutorial. So I thought I'll make it easier for them and for me. So I'm James Maurice.
Uh, Okay, well, I'm going to call you James. And
Thank you.
James, I have been looking forward to this. Folks, I was involved with a panel discussion of people that had moved to retirement communities, and James was on the panel. And I am telling you, he brought down the house, like some of the insightful things that he shared. But I think the most amazing thing is your story, James, is that you're in your 60s and you made the decision to move into a home, which we can call a senior living community, retirement community, but you
Mhm.
made the decision to move into a home in a neighborhood where the average age of your neighbors is probably around early 80s. 84
That's correct.
nationally
Yep.
is what the average is in a life plan continuing care community that you live in.
Mhm.
And so we're going to learn the why and how you made that decision and what your life is like. And so let's kick this off first with just getting to know you a little bit. Uh, Tell us a little bit about your background prior to you thinking about this. You know, where'd you grow up? What was your job? Some of the insightful things and about your background.
Lived in Arlington since 1974, so I consider that my home. Lived in the Washington, D.C. area for most of my life. Worked in publishing for uh, 36 years, so good publishing background. And I knew that I was going to retire when I was ready to take my pension. And it's not that I'm allergic to work, I'm as far from it, but I wanted to be able to enjoy the rest of my life. And that's exactly what I'm doing. And I got on the Priority Club waiting list in 2017 because I knew that I wanted to move into a retirement home early. And I'd done enough research on other retirement homes that helped me make my decision. But also my grandmother's older sister, who she had some big challenges that probably couldn't have been met without the help and intervention of a pastor from her church. And she could have slipped through the cracks and it could have been very tragic. So learn from that. And from my grandmother in San Jose, California, she had the help of her daughter and her daughter's family, my Aunt Patty. So just keeping in mind that I wanted to be able to make the decision on my own terms and early, and just seeing even what people in my community had gone through, let alone relatives. So I was using what I had witnessed to help guide me in my decision.
All right. Now, I've heard a little bit of your story, so I'm going to kind of let's back up a little bit. Okay, so you
Hmm.
grew up in DC, and one of the things that you shared with me is that
That's
you
right.
had the experience of you
Yeah.
started working at a very young age,
Yes.
and actually, I think one of your early jobs was in community.
Yes. We were living by Tenley Circle, Wisconsin and Albemarle. And just about 2 blocks away was the Friendship Heights. I call it Old Folks Home. The name has since changed. It's still there. But I worked there when I was from 11 to 13. And it was this place in my neighborhood, and I saw it and I just went in. I thought, what is this place? Just, a lot of old people, and they were curious about me. I was curious about them. And so got to know some of the people, and um, met the guy who was the director, and he asked me if I wanted to help out, and I did. I would do things like pull weeds and set up chairs in the auditorium, but I also met some of the little old ladies, and I would do grocery shopping for them at a Safeway that was about 2 blocks away and make some tip money. But I did that when I was, from 11 to 13 before we moved. Metro made us move. And so we wound up in Arlington. It was an affordable place to live back at that time, believe it or not. And where we were living, there's now an escalator. But anyway, I was living with my grandparents for 4 years. And so that was living with older people and working with older people. So it was different than I think some of your average people who have exposure to their grandparents at Thanksgiving and Christmas and 4th of July and birthdays. I was with my grandparents every single day. So I felt that I had a different perspective on older people at a
Yeah.
young age.
Okay. And then, so you had this sort of foundation of being around older adults, and it
Mhm.
didn't have a negative effect on you. And you could see
Uh,
where, and I think, folks, a lot of us, we have negative stereotypes.
yeah.
Maybe, maybe somebody went through the same exact experience that James did, but it might have had um, sort of an ageist effect on you.
Mhm.
But this is it. And then you're you're growing up, you're going through your working life, and I know you to be very thoughtful and goal oriented. So it
Mhm.
sounds like when you started working, you started thinking about what's going to happen when I stop working. So it sounds
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
you were very prepared and thoughtful in that area.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And even at one point, I had a one-bedroom apartment in a great community, loved it, and then bought the apartment right next door to it, combined them, had a very large 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. And I thought, this is going to be my forever home. This is my retirement account. And I found that it was actually too much, and I wasn't in the red, but I wasn't really saving any money. And what am I doing with all this stuff? I felt like I was living in a furniture store. And even with the idea that I've got to clean all of this stuff. And so you know how it is. It's like you dust and you vacuum, and 6 months later, you got to turn around and do it all over again. But no, I'm joking. I am joking. But I also asked myself, okay, how much energy do I have right now? And how much energy did I have 10 years before? And how much energy could I conceivably have 10 years down the road, with or without caffeine? And,
Uh-oh. Oh boy. Okay. Hopefully folks can hear me. Um, okay. I'm just gonna talk. I'm not hearing James. And okay, you can hear me. Okay. But I'm assuming okay, so James is paused. Okay, so folks, I'm sure we'll get him back on. And while we're waiting for James to get back on, I'm gonna, okay, let's see. Here we go. James,
Oh, I'm not sure. Did I get cut off?
you did, but you're
Oh,
back on.
oh,
And
okay.
okay, great, great. We got you. Okay. And if that's the only thing that we have to worry about today, it's a pretty good day, right?
Right,
Um,
right.
okay, but okay, we you were talking about you actually expanded your one bedroom
Yes,
apartment to a larger apartment, but then
right,
you realized, hey, I've got all this stuff and it's more to clean. And so
right.
then what happened?
So I made the decision or started doing some research and thinking about how can I save money and to squirrel away money for retirement accounts. Let's focus on that because not necessarily like the clock is ticking, but kind of. And so my real estate agent said, if you downsize, I can probably save you about $1,000 a month. So that motivated me. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it right now. And so got that going. And I thought, okay, how sentimental am I about all of my possessions? Am I to make the decision? No, I want to keep all this stuff no matter what. And I'm going to just sell everything and with the help of the moving company sold it through an auction house and used eBay reseller. So I had the motivation of money, which is a pretty good motivator. And I thought if I have really bad separation anxiety for all these things, I'll just buy more stuff, and which I never did. So it was a really good lesson. I didn't know exactly how I would feel, but I had a backup plan. So then I moved to a one bedroom in the courthouse metro neighborhood, loved it. But I found that I really didn't use my living room and dining room. And I did all of my living in my bedroom. So I was there for 8 years. And then in 2017, I got on the priority club list. And
Now, let me interrupt you real quick
yeah,
here. This transition from the one to two bedroom,
yeah. Uh-huh.
approximately what age were you when you were doing these?
Oh, I would have been 53 when
Okay,
I downsized.
okay, all right.
So
So
that was a good lesson in what I could really do and the tangible aspects of that, and to have the money. And that would have been in 2014, and then in 2017 got on the priority club list for Goodwin House. And a friend of mine who has been living there since about that time, he's the one who made the recommendation. And so I remember looking at the website for Goodwin House. The website looks good. He said, "Well, come over for lunch." So I looked at the menu for lunch to see what do they offer. And I thought, well, let me see once I step in the front door, how do I feel? Okay, I feel really great, loved it. And what about when I actually had lunch? So one thing led to another. A priority club is like a waiting list. So yeah, one thing led to another, and I thought, let me apply and see if I'm accepted. I was accepted. And so I was able to go to a number of open house events and even more than one ice cream social, which was very nice. But meeting some of the people who lived at Goodwin House and people who worked at Goodwin House, and people asking me, "Oh, are you looking for your parents?" And I said, "Well, no, I'm looking for me." And they said, "But you're so young." And I said, "Well, I want to plan for the future and I want to move in when I'm young." And almost every single person said, I should have moved in sooner. So that was
Oh,
part of my motivation as well.
let me interrupt you again
Mhm.
because a couple of things. Okay, so now approximately what age were you when you got put on the priority list?
Um, 56.
Wow. Okay. So, and then what, and then how long was the span from when you moved in? Like, so if you got placed on 56, how old were you when you moved into the community?
I was 60 when I first moved in, and then 3 days later, I turned 61.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, so, and you've been living there for 2 years now.
Yeah. And in May, it'll be 3 years.
Wow. Okay, great. So I remember when you were on the panel that you were talking about this and everybody was blown away at how much thought that you had put into this and done this at a younger age and your responses, and I can't wait to have the discussion here. But I remember one of the other panel members, I said to her, I said, because she loves living in the community she's in, but I want to say she might be 90. I said, could you have done something like this when you were James's age in your 60s? And her response was, there's no way that I would have made that decision, even though it would have been a good decision to make.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but the but let me ask you, like, how do you like how do you like living there? And how do you like living with folks that are a little bit older than you?
At times it did almost seem a little bit surreal. Like, for instance, my next door neighbor is 100 years old. Um, but it is the people, and you could say like age is just a number, and you can learn from people. I've learned a lot. They've learned from me, and I know there were some questions. You mind if I think these might,
Oh no, here, let's start going through some of the
yeah.
questions. Okay, so here,
Yeah.
Steve asks, I'm curious, how is the social life in a life plan community if all of your neighbors are much older than you? Are there others that are your age that live in the community?
I do want to address the minimum age is 55. There are people who are very close to my age, maybe 5 years older, 10 years older. So it's not like huge gaps either. Um, Let me see if I can. I do have some notes that I put together, and I think that at this point, some of them will really come in
Yeah,
handy.
yeah. Go through your
And
notes,
so
folks. James has put so much thought into this discussion, and he's got so many great ideas.
we need to encourage open-mindedness about retirement communities and how younger residents can redefine what it means to live in these communities. Also, we need to talk about intergenerational innovation and the potential for communities to evolve and cater to a wider age range. There are initial challenges in finding common ground and navigating generational gaps. Younger people can thrive in retirement communities and contribute to the culture. There are mutual benefits to the connections formed by friendships with older residents and vice versa. And I found you can't paint with a broad brush. There is no one right or one wrong way to approach this.
I love it. I think that now, like for example, and I want you to read some of your other thoughts because they're
Yeah.
great. But like Rose asks, isn't it depressing to live amongst wheelchairs and walkers? Like I think this is something that not only this is something that challenges a lot of folks is that
Mhm.
they want to move into Shady Acres or Goodwin House and they go to a tour and they see somebody with a wheelchair or walker and that might make them feel sad. What is your personal thought on that, James? Like when you live with residents that might have a higher percentage of disabilities than your typical neighborhood.
There is that reality, and everything is right there in front of you. But I've wanted to be realistic and practical, and to know that not everything is inevitable, and not everything is within your control. But it isn't as if people were just always that way. Some of it happens gradually. And the thing that people are in the right place, they're getting the proper care they need is so much better, in my opinion, than being on their own in a wheelchair or walker or some mobility device. And with the shared sense of community that you're not the only one. So it's a good group support feeling with the residents and the staff, the more than capable staff that can help with any accommodation. So that gives me a lot of comfort. And I can see how that would be the perception, like, oh, that is kind of depressing. But to me, the depressing aspect is taken away by the support aspect.
Yeah, and one thing before we started talking, you were sharing with me a wonderful project that you're involved with there at the community, and that is, I think you do some silent movies. Like, I guess is that one of your hobbies? Is film and
Yes, it turned out, well, they have a movie committee here, and I had made the suggestion, well, have you ever thought about showing silent movies? And they said, well, that's a really great idea. How about if you do it? And I filled in for somebody who was going on vacation around the world cruise. But one thing led to another, and I've been doing silent movie comedies once a week, and I've expanded to the nursing care section within the last 3 months. And a couple of weeks ago, I did silent movie comedies in memory care. So that's been very enriching and beneficial for the residents here, and I'm contributing to the community. There are other ways that I've been volunteering to visit people and read to people and have discussions on anything from classical music composers to nature to history and archaeology. And I've learned a lot. And I get a lot of benefit from it, and I'm helping people in my community.
hmm and I think that I love when I hear the independent living residents in these communities um, supporting their neighbors the way that you described, helping folks that are in assist or just at least at a minimum just visiting
Mhm.
and connecting with folks in assisted living, nursing, and memory care. Um, okay.
And I do
Uh,
want to mention too, there is also the Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads is affiliated with the Episcopal Church, and you don't have to belong to the Episcopal Church to live here. And just by chance, about a year and a half ago, I started going to services on Sunday, and I've been helping with the mobility devices, with the rollators, et cetera, getting people to and from their seats in the pews, um, among other things. But I've been helping with the chapel.
mhm.
So there's that too.
So, I mean, it sounds to me like you're part of your finding purpose in life is helping others. Like,
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
so you know, and I think that there might be this perception that folks have that when you move into a community like the one you're living in, that it's all fun and games, that there's no more purpose in life. It's sort of like, hey, let's happy hour and
Mhm.
what have you. But are there some sort of entertainment activities that you have enjoyed in moving in there?
There are more activities in any given day that any one person could do. And even as far as exercise or um, different committees, there's any kind of committee you could think of. But the thing is, you could do anything or nothing at all. And just because you move to a retirement community doesn't mean you necessarily have to participate. You don't have to be an extrovert. There's no mandatory requirements. But I mean, for instance, there's an indoor swimming pool, there's an exercise facility that's great. There's a library, movie theater, a thrift store, just an incredible art center with an art gallery. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that I'm missing, but some people compare it living here to being on a cruise ship. In three dining venues, and everything is so many things are taken care of for you. And I know personally, I've been given the luxury of time. I have not cooked a meal since the day before I moved. I don't have to think about anything related to food, gathering, preparation, cleaning. So that frees up a lot of time. My apartment is completely cleaned once a week. I don't have to do any cleaning. So I can allocate my time in ways that I wasn't able to before. And I found that stress management is time management, and time management is stress management. And
Man,
also, I'd like to mention too, along with the activities, living here, it almost felt like I was also living in an office building, so to speak, because there's hundreds of employees and they're like family and the family you want to be around. So there's that. There's the residents and there's the employees.
okay. Now here I've got a good question here from Arlene that I want to share, and I'm curious at your response. It's like she said, I've lived in my home since 1971. I have no interest in moving to a community. There's one right near me. The average age was 90 when I exhibited my photography there 10 years ago. They told me I was too young and the cost was way too expensive.
Hmm.
Can you, as share just your perspective on that's a very common approach, by the way, folks. I mean, like every
Mhm.
day of the week I am talking to people that say I'm not ready yet, and I try to dive into what would make them ready, and usually it goes towards I don't want to leave my home. But now, there's also been a bunch of questions here on, hey, James, living in a life plan community is way more expensive than living in your condo. Uh, Reflect on the value a little bit of that. So I know I hit you with a bunch of
Yeah,
ideas there.
yeah. I mean, I totally understand the connections to a person's home. It takes on a life of its own. It is part of their whole fabric and foundation of their lives, and completely understand. But even thinking about the sort of cost benefit analysis of my decision and to do it now, get my foot in the door. I've got everything planned, just about as planned as I could possibly be. So yes, it is expensive, but it is for the long-term care. And I find there's a lot of this, almost all of it, that I could not have reproduced on my own living in the condo where I lived. Some things, yes, but it's sort of almost like one-stop shopping, everything under one roof. And for me, that made it a huge difference. Um, and
And,
I could reverse, I could say, okay, well, I want to go back to my old life. And I could, but I know what I would be missing.
and let's get it, off the top of your head, what are some of the things that you would be missing? That's a great
Oh,
analogy. Yeah.
the people, the sense of community. And for me, my home is not just the walls, in where I sleep. My home is my community. So I have a small apartment in a big community. So it's so much bigger than just where I sleep. So I would not want to give up the people,
Okay.
both
And
residents and staff. I've
and
I've grown attached to them.
and you had mentioned earlier that you haven't cooked a meal since you
Right.
lived there. So that's another thing. And I guess if you ever did, I don't know if you've ever done a cost analysis on that element of your expenses,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
but that could be an interesting element. But folks, James is very unique. That's why we're featuring him. But you realize he has been thinking about this for
Mhm.
a long time now. That the other thing in planning, the other thing is, I guess, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but can you speak to the peace of mind that you
Oh,
live
yes.
in a community and you don't have a crystal ball on the changes that might occur in the future, but in the community you live in,
Mhm.
all the way up to having dementia, you can stay in your neighborhood.
Right, exactly, exactly. Um, I mean, without having it sound like a, sob story or whatever, but at age 17, I was essentially an orphan, and I was on my own, and I had to learn how to be self-reliant and self-sufficient. And there's times where I did seek out help or I would accept help, but basically I did everything on my own. And I never wanted to wait for a milestone event and then start planning. I wanted to be as planned ahead as I possibly could. And it gives me peace of mind. And peace of mind helps me sleep at night. Peace of mind is very valuable. And if you can prepare and plan, you will thank yourself later.
Wow.
And that's what I've done. But I can't say that, my blueprint or my playbook is what everybody else should follow. I just know that it's worked for me.
Well, and that's why I like having you on, folks. And I'm glad that you brought that up. Is that it's your playbook. You're right. Your playbook is not gonna fit everybody else. It's actually very
No,
unique. But
right,
what I admire is that you had a playbook and that you thought about this in
right,
advance and that you weren't scared to make decisions that might be viewed as outside of the box.
right,
And
right.
you're seeing benefits for you
Mhm.
in that situation. Okay.
Yeah, and
Um,
even remembering when I went to an interview when I'd accepted the apartment that I'm in now, and I was talking to two of the marketing move-in people, and I said, "Oh yeah, I could probably live another 20 years." And they said, "No, you could probably live another 40 years, for life expectancies, not just the actuarial tables." So I thought, okay, but I want to enjoy the rest of my life, and I am. But also, it's not completely unique. There have been people who moved in here that were working full time before they retired, and even some people who worked into their 80s and almost in 90s, but that's beside the point. But I got a real glimpse of what day-to-day life would be like before I actually retired. And March 1st, it'll be 1 year that I've been fully retired. So I've
okay,
been
so
able to
you live
really,
there and you continued working your job up
yes,
to that point. Now,
full time.
Joe has a question because you obviously gave a lot of previous thought to this. Did you end up buying long-term care insurance as part of your financial planning?
Yes, yes, I
Okay.
did. Yes, that was a major motivator. Another, planning for the future.
Okay, and then moving into a life plan community where there's
Yes,
some element of protection there, you were able to
absolutely.
share with the folks when you moved in, I also have long-term care insurance. So
Yes,
the
yes,
type of contract you have is accommodating that.
yes, yes.
Okay. Um, let's see. Okay. Antoinette asks, are you in a one-bedroom apartment? And
I'm in a studio apartment,
yeah,
and coincidentally, I guess in less than a month, it'll be the third time that I've had my home open for an open house. So And the first time they had a session in the morning and the afternoon, and there was more than 40 people that stopped by to see a studio apartment. And a lot of people said, well, I know I'm never going to get a studio, but I just wanted to see what it looked like. And then they see it and then they say, you know what? I could do that. So, yeah.
That's great. Okay, all right. Okay, well, so you're in a studio apartment.
Mhm.
Karen was asking about cooking. If you wanted to cook, could you cook in the studio?
Yes, I do. I have a stove top and I have
Okay.
a microwave a convection oven and a not large refrigerator, but it's not like a dormitory refrigerator. But yeah, I have a kitchen that I could cook full scale meals in. And I never resented cooking. I liked it. I did it for, forever, but it's nice to not have to.
Yeah. And let's see, Nancy says that she was an executive director in an assisted living and that many of the people that moved in there had wished they had done it earlier.
Hmm. Hmm.
Kudos to you for being proactive. She says, I learned something every single day from the residents and the other team members.
Hmm.
And she heard the description of a cruise ship. But folks, I know a lot of times we like to say, hey, it's like living on a cruise ship. And James, you even said that. But here's the thing. I've never heard of somebody who's on a cruise ship hosting silent movie comedies for
Yeah,
people in memory care.
right,
The benefit, while there are activities that you could maybe compare to a cruise ship and cooking, there's also just purposeful ways of engaging and being a part of that community and
right.
helping your neighbors. And I'm really glad that you do that, James. And I know that countless other people and your neighbors are also doing the same thing.
Even from a realistic aspect, um, many parts of my life have improved dramatically, drastically, but it doesn't mean that when you move into a community such as this, that all your cares have gone. There's still things you have to care about, and but there's more positives. But I don't want to think of that as a negative. But I guess the thing is, it doesn't mean that all your cares go away,
Yep.
if that
Um,
makes sense, you know.
Oh, this is great. I love hearing things like this. James is an inspiration. I've been on the priority list since 2016, and
Oh,
this is helping me decide whether to stay in my home or make a move. I'm glad that we can just present a different perspective out there, folks. Like as you saw, like some of the first questions I was reading are, James, what's it like living with people with wheelchairs and walkers? I
yeah,
think that is the common perception,
right, right.
and we need to sort of change that perception in the world.
Hmm.
And you're doing a great job of that. Um,
You
let's
know,
see, James, you had a lot of notes before
I know.
we were talking, and I'm looking at
Right.
the clock. We got about 15 minutes together
Uh-huh.
here.
Uh-huh.
What are some what are some other things that you wanted to make sure to share?
Just some of the great feelings when I retired March 1st of this year. It was actually a Friday, my first full day of retirement. And then when it was that Sunday, I saw a resident and her daughter was here, daughter who still works. And she said to me, oh, so this is your first Sunday. And I said, well, what do you mean? She goes, the first Sunday that you won't have to think about, oh, I got to go to work tomorrow. I said, oh, thank you for saying that. Thank you so much. But I was also reminded of, and I sometimes I'll kind of joke, but not necessarily for people who work here. I'll say like, yeah, it's Friday. Oh yeah, Friday. And I remember when I was still working, and I would say that to people who lived here who were retired, and they kind of look at me like, well, every day is Friday, every day is Saturday. But just recently, I came across on YouTube a song from 1989 called Always Saturday by a group called Guadalcanal Diary. And some of the
Beautiful.
lyrics are, I want to live where it's like today. I want to live where it's all.
Oh, shoot. Okay. He has um gone out again, but I have not heard the the band name Guadalcanal Diary in years. And I've got the I'm gonna share that YouTube. um Hey, James, I was just telling the audience that I had not heard Guadalcanal Diary uttered band name uttered in years,
Yeah.
and I found the YouTube that I dropped that song into the lake.
Uh-huh.
That's great.
Yeah. And another some song lyrics that really resonate with me is a song from Laurie Anderson, but the lyrics are: Paradise is exactly like where you are right now, only much, much better. And so I've always wanted to and try to live in the moment, think about where I am and how it feels, and to appreciate it. And another thing I wanted to mention, just my own perception and my own interpretations, and that expression, life.
Oh, shoot. Okay, we're gonna get this quote from James here shortly. The uh it, the I hope that y'all find this helpful, and I really like the opportunity to sort of present a different frame of decision making. And just if you can just imagine how much, and you can see just how much energy James brings to this community. And if we have more of a uh yeah, yeah, Mary says people can be in wheelchairs at any age. Exactly. I'm constantly reminding people of that, is that they're not unique to older adults. But uh yeah, Arlene says it made me happy once again. I'm happy where I am and I turn 85. And that's the whole thing, is that everybody has their own uh life journey. Okay. What James is doing is unique to him. The important thing is not to stick your head in the sand and just say, I'm not gonna make decisions and what have you. Okay, James, we got you back again.
Yeah.
We got cut off on a
Yes.
quote from the Lori.
Laurie Anderson.
Yeah.
So the quote would be: Paradise is exactly like where you are right now,
Okay.
only much, much better.
Better. Okay, we got that one, but
Yeah.
then you had another one that you were in the middle of when you got
Yes.
cut off.
Um, the expression, life is a journey, not a destination. And I've never quite agreed with that wording. And to me, life is a number of destinations. And I think about different decades in my life and how I was and viewed the world, even in my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And I'm at a destination right now. And some of it I'm going on different journeys and finding other destinations. So that's just my interpretation.
Yeah, and I guess, so a normal, gosh, holy cow, that scratch that. I didn't say that. But like some people, your cohort might say, "Well, James, like why are you moving to a community in Northern Virginia? Why don't you go to Margaritaville or,
Right,
down to Florida or something like that?"
right. Yeah.
Do you ever get like your friends or stuff saying something like that to you?
Not exactly, but some people say, that kind of thing like, well, why do you want to move into a place where there's just a bunch of old people? But even thinking about at the office, I was kind of one of the old people, which was fine with me. But like I said, I like to be realistic and practical. And I'm not looking for a fountain of youth. I just need love and warmth and good sense of community, which I've got. To me, that is very, very important. The wonderful sense of community is all about the people.
Yeah, no, and these are the people that you chose to connect with, and you're here. I will tell you, folks, that I mean, I've been doing Sourcebook for 35 years, and I'd probably say one of the largest amount, the state where we send the most source books to is Florida and some of the Sunbelt states. It's people that said, I moved away and now I want to go back and back to where I grew up and where I lived before I moved here. Okay, let's see. Yeah, typical versus atypical. Thanks, James. I didn't mean to say normal. Okay, let me quickly go through here. Oh, somebody asked, do you have more or fewer expenses than you anticipated?
I believe I actually have fewer expenses. Yes. For being here 2.5 years. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you owned your own condo,
Oh,
you
yeah.
had more unexpected expenses
Yes.
and
Yes.
that you can't predict, just like
Right.
we
Right.
can't predict our health care. It's ironic now that we think about that is that you made a decision to move into a place that at first glance it probably is more expensive than
Hmm.
what you had. However, you don't have unpredictable expenses that homeowners have, and you have a safety net. If just like we don't have a crystal ball whether uh, there's going to be a fire in my neighborhood or a tree's
Right.
going to fall in my house. We don't have a crystal ball, just like I don't have a crystal ball whether I'm going to get dementia. But you live in a place that has consistency and a safety net
Hmm.
if those things happen to you.
And the thing is, I could have reversed my decision. Um, and I've been here 2.5 years and I haven't. So I think that counts for a lot.
Yeah.
Even though it
Okay.
seemed like, oh, this is a permanent move, permanent decision. Not necessarily, but it is.
Let's see. Okay. Oh, James and Steve, thanks so much. I'm considering moving to a rental apartment for people over, 60. It is in a very walkable neighborhood, which is important to me. Now, James, Goodwin Living has multiple communities. Which
Yes.
one are you in?
I'm in Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads, and that's a very good point because I remember when I first started researching and I considered Alexandria, but I looked on Google Map, where you can see the streets, and I saw there's nothing within walking distance. But then here at Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads, there's stores right next door, even though I
Oh,
hardly utilize them, but I like the idea that they're that close.
yeah,
Another
I
thing
mean, you
I've
can walk
never,
right next to the grocery store, but
right.
as we've discovered, you don't need to buy groceries anymore.
No, no, hardly at all. Just a little bit of snack food. But the thing is, I've never owned a car in my whole life.
Wait, you've never owned a
No, I've
car?
never owned a car. The last time I was behind the wheel of a car was 1985. I've always done um, everything I need to do with public transportation or walking. But I think that's just another part of being self-sufficient.
Well, and I imagine that that also contributed to the fact that you were financially able to make a decision like this because
Yes,
that's a huge expense that
right.
that you don't have to be. Okay. All
Very
right.
good
We got
point.
about 5 minutes. I'm going to try to get through everything here. Okay. I shared a 60-minute interview with Lori Anderson. A few people
Okay.
wanted to know who she was. Oh, Karen says some communities like yours offer short stays to see what it's like to live there. Is that something that you tried?
No, I've never heard of that. but I think that is a really good marketing tool. But for my background, going to open houses and different types of events, and even the holiday bazaar, that helped. But yeah, short-term stay, never would have thought of that. Really, really good idea.
Yeah, and let's see. Lee says, I'm a single woman and I've started looking into a life plan community. Some of the reasons are it takes me a long time to feel part of a community. I only want to go through organizing, preparing my home for sale once. It's going to be hard enough. Let me ask you, like, sort of piggybacking off Lee's comment there, how long did it take you to feel like you were part of the community? And did you have any sort of immediate apprehension after you'd made this decision?
Well, there was a little bit of the, age differential and people kind of looking at me like, do you work here? You live here? And, like, how old are you? And so that was kind of a little, could be a little awkward at times, but I can understand just because of a lot of people being in their 80s and older. And then all of a sudden there's this young person living there. It took a while for the novelty to wear off. But then I had a couple of comments and it's, how old are you? And I say, well, I'm 89, but I've had a lot of work done. I say, well, I'm 37, but I retired early. So there
Yeah.
was that. But also one thing that I've kept in mind, I've worked for large corporations my whole life. And working in an office is almost like having a lot of roommates. Think about it.
Oh, yeah.
All of their habits and everything, you're around each other all the time. So that sort of helped me be a little more patient and tolerant for moving into a place with a whole lot of people and they're around all the time. And even though I've lived in garden apartments where there's a lot of people, you're just in your own unit and you maybe see people when you go out but not the same as like working in a huge office or living in a place like Goodwin House.
Hmm. Let's see. This is one of your fellow residents is
Yes,
on the call. It's
right.
Michael says, I didn't know exactly what it would be like to live at Goodwin House. What I've experienced is incredibly diverse ways to grow, play, exercise,
Oh,
meet, and work with James. This place is built for growth and community. I still miss my home, but not as much as I love Goodwin House. Thank you for sharing that, Michael. And folks, as much as we're talking about Goodwin House because that's where James lives,
mhm,
this is not unique to Goodwin House. I mean,
right,
there are other communities all over the country, and I think what you see is that and what James is illustrating is it's the community of these
right,
interesting
right,
people that are all in the same boat, and there is growth. I mean,
right.
I think it's a stigma that we have to think that these communities are not a time and an opportunity for us to grow and continue lifelong learning journeys.
And I never knew that I could be as happy as I am now. I have never been happier in my whole life. And every single day, more than once, I say to myself, and in a really good way, I can't believe I live here. I am so grateful
This
every day.
I love it. Somebody asked, did you keep up with you? Have you kept up with your previous friends, like your coworkers and things like that?
There's a few people, and there's a woman who um, grew attached to, and her dog, and so her and her dog come and visit quite often. But yeah, there's still some connection with some people from my old neighborhood. Not so much the people that I worked with, because they're probably undergoing too much stress to hear about my leisurely lifestyle. But I might rub it in at some point soon when my 1 year anniversary comes.
You should, yeah, you should invite them to an event, cater an
Right.
event there.
That's a really good idea.
Okay, let me glance through some of the questions and comments. Everybody's saying thanks again. Uh, okay, thanks for sharing your experience. Somebody's asking, and again, this is just indicative of just in general, but like minorities and what's they were wondering, I guess they've been touring communities and sometimes
Mhm.
don't see diversity in terms of
Ye-
culture and ethnic.
Yes, I would say for both residents and staff, there many minorities are represented, and we call it like I believe with the staff is something like I may not have these numbers completely right, but that there's 37 different languages that are spoken for
Among staff and residents.
right.
And
And yeah, people that have lived all over the world, and I don't know if you'd say like multiracial marriages. I don't know if that's the proper term, but
we probably
minorities
are.
and everything LGBTQ, the whole there's a lot of awareness, lots and lots of awareness. I don't feel any exclusion of
Okay,
any sort.
great, great. um Man, I can't believe it. We got through a bunch of these questions. So, James, I always like to ask folks that I have on here, are there any topics that or concepts that we didn't talk about today that you wanted to bring to the attention of folks?
I think we did cover so much, and I went through a lot of my notes without reading them, right from a piece of paper. But I think with the very thoughtful comments and questions, and just the back and forth between the two of us, I think we covered quite a bit of territory. Unless for some reason this could continue at some point
Oh,
during the
I
year
would.
for like a part two.
Oh, I'd love to have you on as often as possible. I think just I love real life stories. It's
Yeah.
so much better than a checklist. And
Yeah.
but I think what you really speak to, and I put you on a pedestal, is that your thoughtful planning. Like most people stick their head in the sand and don't think about the future as well as you have. And it's great to see the unique plan that you created for yourself. And the ultimate outcome is what you just said a few moments ago is that you're happier than you've ever been in your life. And that's unique to
Absolutely.
you, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And this is wonderful. So, folks, thank you so much for joining us for our first discussion of the year. We hope to have a bunch more of these. We hope to have James back on, and maybe this will inspire some of your neighbors to jump on and share their stories. We'd love to do that. And this is recorded, so I'll make sure to get you the recording. And then, James, like one of the things we could also do is take some of those notes that you provided to
Oh,
and
right.
maybe put them in sort of an article and
Oh,
attach that to the discussion.
that's a really great idea. Okay.
Okay.
Excellent idea.
All right.
Thanks for
Well,
mentioning it.
thank you so much, and thank you everybody for your sharing. And we will see. I guess we'll see you all next week at the hoarding and the other discussion we have on the
Yeah.
topic. So,
Okay.
all right, James. Thanks again.
That,
You
you're
truly are an
welcome.
inspiration.
Thank you so
And
much.
we'll talk to you all later.
I'm honored.